Don't forget, guys, if what you see in this review is something you would like to pick up, or any other Safari Ltd figures, that you make sure you use the code ANDY at checkout if ordering from the Safari Ltd website, or in fact check the description, as I will have a link that you can click which will automatically apply that code so you can save yourself 15% off of this or any other figure from the Safari Ltd website today. Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. So today we are going to take a look at another Safari Ltd figure, but this is actually quite a few figures, as this is one of their minifigure tubes, and I do have quite a few of the tubes, and thought why not start getting through some of them now, as again I have not ever reviewed any of the Safari Ltd tubes in the past, and they have some really nice ones, so I figured we would start with the Feathered Dinosaur Toob, which is exactly what you have right here in front of you. So let's go ahead and open this up and see which species we have inside. So we've got a Protoceratops, or at least that's what I would assume this is supposed to be, since there isn't actually any card or anything in here telling me which species are included, so I'm kind of just guessing. And then we have what potentially could be a Velociraptor, I think. Pretty sure that's a Velociraptor right there. Actually, I could be wrong, because this one as well, again, looks like a raptor, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to try to look into who that guy there is, actually. Then we have what I assume is probably an Apatosaurus, but I don't know why he would be a feathered dinosaur. Regardless, of still a really cool looking figure right there. And continuing on with some more confusion, we have a Chasmosaurus, which again, I'm not 100% sure why that would be a feathered dinosaur, but I also don't know why a Protoceratops would be, unless we're going to take into consideration quills and kind of consider those feathers, even though they're not. But kind of, I guess, just random dinosaurs included in this set with some feathered figures is basically what I'm getting out of this already. Then we have what I assume is probably a Microraptor. Again, I don't have any type of an information sheet to tell me which species here are included. Then we've got a Caudipteryx, I believe. That's who he looks like, regardless. Again, not positive. A Pachycephalosaurus. Also not feathered, which he fell over now. Also not a feathered dinosaur. Then we have what I believe is a Dilong, but I'm not 100% sure once again, but I'm thinking that's what it is. And the more I'm thinking about this figure here, again being a raptor of some kind, I do believe he might be a Sinornithosaurus, but I'm not positive. And actually, either one of these really could be, because the raptor also kind of looks similar to this one here, so I'm really kind of unsure as to which one here is which, as they are very similar looking in these two figure forms. Then we also have a Bapiosaurus and a Psittacosaurus as well. He fell over too, as well as a Tyrannosaurus, which oddly enough, the Tyrannosaurus, even though he could have been presented with feathers, is not feathered. I don't know why. Neither is the Psittacosaurus, but regardless, a whole bunch of really cool figures, half of which I've already knocked over, so let's go ahead and get a closer look at all of them right now. So we're going to start taking a look at this guy here, which again I think might be the Sinornithosaurus, but I'm not 100% sure. It's either that or the Velociraptor, but I feel like the tail feathers on the Velociraptor really give off that Velociraptor look, something like that. But regardless, just taking a look at the figure in general, you can see some fairly nice detailing, not too much up in the head sculpt, as the face area is kind of muted for the most part when it comes to the detailing, but the eye does look quite nice as far as the paintwork goes. The mouth paint is definitely sloppy. You can see it's run out onto the lower jaw, but on figures like this that are so small, I kind of expect some mishaps like that. The overall coloration appears to be quite nice, with a few different variations of like a nice brown and like a yellowish coloration, and then you have some nice darker brown or dark gray stripes that run throughout the body in certain areas. You also have the teeth included in there as far as the sculpt, but they don't really appear to be painted any type of a specific color. Or maybe they are, actually. It's a little hard to tell because the face is pretty much a white coloration, as is the inside of the mouth where the teeth are, which you would expect to be. But we can see that the nails and everything are not painted as far as the feet go or the hands, but as far as the actual body goes, you can see some really nice detailing and sculpt work of the feathers of the dinosaur, so that is definitely a plus. So overall, I think that it's a pretty nice looking figure. And we just figured out who is who. Okay, so this is the Velociraptor. I was wrong with my assumption that this might be the Sinornithosaurus, but regardless, again, being a pretty nice looking Velociraptor, it's not bad, but the sculpt isn't as good as I think it could be, and not as good as some of these other figures here. So let's see actually if I was correct with this one being the Sinornithosaurus. And look at that, I was. So alright. A little confusion there, but I was pretty sure that there was a Sinornithosaurus in here, and that's one of the things that was kind of confusing to me when I actually opened the package and couldn't figure out who was who. So this one I actually do quite like a good bit, honestly, as far as the color scheme goes. I think that the paint scheme they've gone with is really cool, and the way the brown plays off of that white is quite flashy. Very nice looking paint scheme, and you can see quite a bit more paint application included in this one than the last figure, as we now have like an orangish color on the feet, but then a mixture of yellow and orange for both the hands and the snout area of the dinosaur. And you can also see that the eyes are painted really nicely, beautifully applied in the correct spot. Unfortunately, the inside of the mouth and the teeth are not painted. I don't know why, because actually on the Velociraptor we did have paint on the tongue, even though it was a little sloppy. The nails, once again, are not painted either, but the overall detailing of the figure does look really quite nice for the most part. Beautiful feathering all over the place, as well as some really nice paintwork, to be honest. So this is probably one of my favorites so far. It just has a really overall flashy appearance, but at the same time, it is definitely quite natural looking. And I think that Safari did a good job on this, especially considering we don't have any figures of this species previously that I know of, but really cool looking figure. Then we do have the Pachycephalosaurus, which almost more so looks like a baby Pachycephalosaurus than an adult, but you can see that the coloration is pretty decent. It's nothing overly flashy, just mostly browns and kind of like a yellowish brown here on the underside. But on this guy, I feel like a lot of the details kind of muted, especially in the face area, and I don't know what in the world happened over here. Somehow he has a big splotch of paint from the eye paint up on his forehead, the poor guy. But the eye itself actually looks fairly decent, but then when you look at this eye is really sloppy, and then you have black paint up here on the top of the head, so definitely some sloppiness with this Pachycephalosaurus, but I think the sculpting overall is okay. He definitely has quite a bit of a pot belly on him right there, you can see. It's not my favorite figure that's in the set, that's for sure. I do kind of like the usage of like a blue and a green up here on the dome skull of the Pachycephalosaurus, as well as that nice lighter like yellowish color in the snout, and then you just basically have a brown for the majority of the body. So it's got some ups, it's got some downs, but definitely not the best one included. Then we have the Bapiosaurus, so we'll get a nice closer look once my camera focuses. On this one you can see some sloppiness again with the eye paint. A little bit of the black paint has run down there onto the cheekbone, but if you move past that, I think this dinosaur figure actually is quite nice. Definitely another one with a flashy look with that beautiful white coloration they've used in so many different areas, like down here, and then on the legs, and then up on the neck and head. I do definitely like that, and again, I love the way that that yellow plays off of the white, and this dark gray, I think, really does look very natural in comparison to that white coloration and the yellow, so the coloration of the figure is quite nice. Once again, there's not too much to be had as far as paintwork goes, like the nails aren't painted, but I think that's kind of a given at this point that the Safari Ltd tube figures are not going to have nail paint, and you can actually see that the beak area is painted, so that's a plus. You've got some nice paint right there, and you can again see the eye is painted on this side, and it's not too sloppy, but it's not perfectly placed, that's for sure. The overall sculpting as well is quite nice. You could see some very nice feather detail included for the most part, kind of has like a scruffy feathered type of a look. So decent figure. We do have a really good version of this species from Safari Ltd from the Carnegie collection, but this mini is also quite nice. And now getting into a ceratopsian, we've got the Chasmosaurus, and once again, I feel like the detail is a little muted in certain areas, like in the face. You can see it definitely has a bit of a muted look, but it's nice to see some coloration inside the mouth. I do quite like the figure overall as far as the pose and everything goes, and you can see some really nice detailing on the back of the frill there, but I feel like the pose is quite nice. He kind of looks like he's a little bit panicked. It'd be nice to put a predator near him and make it look like he's kind of on the defensive, but I feel like the sculpt is decent, some really nice detailing throughout the body, But once you come up into the head, well, actually this side of the head looks quite nice as far as the detailing goes. This side is a little bit muted, but I don't know why that is. The inside of the mouth is actually painted nicely. You can see it's much nicer than the Velociraptor was. There's no sloppiness really or anything, and the eyes also look nice as far as the paintwork goes. You also have a nice coloration here, like a greenish coloration up here on the frill. So some pretty decent color variation, but there's not really too much to be included. You also have a white here on the underside, and then some green stripes up here on the top of the body. Very appealing looking figure, but not as highly detailed, I think, as some of them. Then we have the Apatosaurus, and I really love most Safari Ltd. Apatosaurus figures, and this one as well I think is actually quite nice. You have a nice happy looking Apatosaurus head up here. As we come down the neck, you can see some variations of like brown on the underside and green up here, which actually looks really nice on the figure. You can also see some really nice sculpt as far as the minute detailing, lots of creasing in the skin and everything as we run down the neck. Once you come down into the body, you can as well see some beautiful skin texture, skin detailing going on. Nice long curved tail. Again, the proportions on the figure aren't perfect because it is a minifigure, but I actually think it looks really nice for the most part, and definitely one of the better figures in the set, or at least one of the more appealing looking figures in the set. Not too much as far as paintwork goes. Again, pretty much just a green and a brown, and then you have the eyes painted, but I still definitely think it's a pretty nice looking minifigure. Then we have our Psittacosaurus, which I do really quite like. I think this one is definitely a very cool, kind of an older style of a Psittacosaurus, and overall has a pretty nice appearance to it. Again, the detailing seems to be all very similar in certain figures, like the Ceratopsians, and even the Pachycephalosaurus kind of having like that somewhat muted appearance in certain areas to the detail, but this one I think definitely looks nice. And although some areas look slightly muted, for the most part it doesn't really have too much of a muted detail look, and I think overall it's a pretty decent looking Psittacosaurus, kind of similar. You could probably use this as a baby to the old Carnegie version of the Psittacosaurus that they had released, which I am a huge fan of that figure, and I do quite like the color variation. You've got some different variations of greens and like greenish browns, and definitely a nice brown up here on the head, so pretty cool figure. And again, I'm going to try to go through these figures a little faster than I usually do as far as my reviews. I usually get very thorough, but there are so many figures included in these mini tube sets that you kind of have to rush through them a little bit or we'd be here all day. Then we have our Dailong, and you can definitely see that this is a very beautiful figure, and I actually think that this one is quite a bit nicer than their actual bigger Dailong figure, which is a decent figure as well, but I really like the paint scheme of this one with this very nice black coloration. There's not too much going on as far as paintwork goes due to that black, but I feel like it overall looks really natural. Definitely a nice head sculpt up here as well, beautifully glossed eye, which you can see shining and differentiating itself from the rest of the body, being that the body is black. You can actually pick out the eye due to that gloss coat. The inside of the mouth as well looks fairly decently done as far as the paintwork goes, again being a nice white coloration in there. You can see it's a little thick, but considering how insanely small this figure is, that is 100% forgivable. You cannot expect everything to be painted perfectly when you have so many figures that are mass produced. I actually do quite like this one a lot, and I also like the white stripes up here on the top of the head. The overall sculpting looks good, and again the feathering of the figure also looks really quite nice. You can see that it's nice, very fine feathers all over the body as you come out to the really beautiful tail feathers out here on the end of the dinosaur. And you can see on the underside just how nicely done they have actually sculpted out the detailing of the figure in the feather department, and just in general the overall body. And you can see some nice color variation here with the feet and the hands kind of giving it a brownish look down there as well. So really cool figure for sure. Definitely like that one. Then here's one that I definitely think will be one of my favorites, and it would be the Microraptor. And you can see it is a very flashy, bright color scheme to it with a beautiful blue, and then you have like a yellowish coloration out here on the wings, and then a very nice black stripe that runs on both the wings and the legs and the tail, which the tail is probably sloppily painted because I can't really tell. But I would imagine this wasn't the goal to just have one side have this. You would expect it to go up the other side too, maybe. I don't know, maybe this was the intentions, but I think that the fact that it's in like a soaring pose is really, really cool, and it's odd. You would think you would see this pose more often with Microraptor figures, but you really don't. So it's nice to have one in this pose, and the overall detailing of the figure as well, I think looks pretty nice for the most part. There's no paint inside the mouth, but the Microraptor, you can see his head next to my finger. The Microraptor one is very small, and the actual sculpting of the body and the feathers does look really quite nice for its size. Impressively well done. A little bit of sloppy paint, but overall I feel like the figure is a really cool looking version of a Microraptor. Then we have the Caudipteryx. So we can see some decent sculpt up here on the head. If it would focus, you can see some nice sculpt. The feathers here that run back behind the eye are really nicely done. You also have a yellow for the beak area and some nice variations of like that greenish coloration and some browns and stuff. I feel like the coloration of this guy is really nice, really natural, although he probably could have gotten a little bit flashier, but you can see as I turn it, just lots of coloration included as far as different tones of color. Even down here on the tail feathers and the arms, you could see some nice browns included. Once again, no nail paint or anything. We haven't seen that on any of the figures overall, but I do quite like the sculpt, kind of standing up, maybe looking like he's having a confrontation with another Caudipteryx or something like that. But overall, it's a really cool looking figure, beautifully sculpted, quite beautifully painted. Definitely one of the best, I think, in this set would be this Caudipteryx. Really, really nice. Then we have one of my favorite ceratopsians of all time, the Protoceratops, which this isn't the best Protoceratops you're probably ever going to see, but I still think he's quite nice. Definitely very beautifully sculpted up here on the frill, and I love the usage of the brown and the way it plays off of the primary body color. You can see some nice brown stripes here as well, running down the back. Some fairly nice looking sculpt, and I feel like as far as the Ceratopsians go, it's probably the nicest sculpted one in the set as far as the actual minute detailing goes. So pretty cool looking Protoceratops. Again, he almost has like a baby type of a look to him, but I don't think the baby's frill would be quite as large as it is on this one. So definitely think it's meant to be an adult, but regardless, a really nice looking Protoceratops, even if it's not too accurate by today's standards. I think that the sculpt and paintwork is really nicely done. The eyes are also painted spot on and given a nice gloss coat once again. And then we have the inside of the mouth. You can see the tongue is painted in there. So overall, quite nicely done as far as the Protoceratops goes. Leading the pack for sure as far as my favorite. And then we have the last one of the set, and that would be the Tyrannosaurus, which kind of a missed opportunity as far as leaving one in here with the feathers on it, as it's a feathered dinosaur set, and they chose to give us a scaly Tyrannosaurus. I don't know why, but I actually do like the sculpt of it. And since now we think Tyrannosaurus didn't have feathers, it's kind of sensible to have this in the set, although the set has been released for a very long time. You can see that the sculpting is fairly nicely done. It's nothing that's something you can write home about and be super amazed by, but it's not bad either. It's actually quite similar to one of the old Carnegie figures as far as the way that the tail bends in that kind of thick tail. But again, nothing overly wonderful or crazy as far as the paint scheme. Nice natural looking coloration for it. A little bit of sloppiness on the underside. You can see like that yellow paint here for the underside isn't spot on to where it should be, but at the same time, it's okay. It's not the best figure in the set, but it's definitely not the worst either. So as far as the size goes on these figures, we're not going to measure them. You can just see here as I hold the tape measure over, there's just way too many to measure all together. But if we look at just one, if I knocked him over now, but if we look at the T-Rex, you're looking at close to 3 inches, but not quite, probably like 2 3/4 inches long. So hopefully that will give you at least somewhat of an idea as far as what the size is. And one thing I will say that's quite impressive about these figures overall is that they all balance really well. There are no standing issues at all with any of them. And that is one thing that I do often see when it comes to minifigures, so it's quite exciting to see all of these figures here standing so well. So this Feathered Dinos mini tube is really quite cool and contains so many very cool species. I definitely love the fact that they have a very wide array of species, kind of covering so many different types of dinosaurs and including them all here in one set. And being a feathered dinosaur tube, you would expect it to be all feathered dinosaurs, but that is not the route that Safari Ltd took here. They did include quite a few anti-feathered, I guess you could call them, dinosaurs like the Apatosaurus and the two Ceratopsians. You've got a Pachycephalosaurus in there, Tyrannosaurus, which could have been feathered, but again, some very cool non-feathered dinosaurs included with some really nice feathered dinosaurs. Most of the figures I feel like are really nicely sculpted. All of them are really nicely sculpted, but some I feel like are sculpted better than others as far as like the fine detailing goes, because certain figures like the Pachycephalosaurus just have a little bit of a muted appearance to it as far as the fine detailing goes. But then you have other dinosaurs like the Microraptor, Caudipteryx, the Protoceratops. Again, there's quite a few that have really nice detailing and sculpt work. So there's a good mixture of both, but in no way do I think the kind of muted appearance on some takes away from the set at all, because overall I feel like each and every figure is definitely really nicely done. A little bit of sloppiness here and there as far as the paintwork goes, but on minifigures like this I do kind of expect that from time to time. But honestly, I think all of them are really nice, beautifully painted, beautifully sculpted, and absolutely worth a purchase if you are interested in getting a good bit of species all together for one nice price. So I will include a link in the description to where you can pick this tube up, so make sure you check the description. But before you go doing all that, make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.